Have you ever heard a voice so powerful it pierces through your soul, gives you chills, and makes you stop whatever you're doing just to listen a little longer? That's exactly what happened when the name Jamal Roberts began to echo throughout the music world. But who is he really? Where does this incredible strength behind each note come from? In an industry often filled with superficial glitz and fleeting sensations, Jamal's emergence is like an oasis in a desert thirsting for genuine meaning. He's not just a singer, he's a symbol of resilience, hope, and heartfelt truth. This video dives deep into his life story, from a young boy with impossible dreams to a global inspiration changing lives through music. But before we uncover this powerful journey, don't forget to like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any more real and uplifting stories from the music world and beyond. Now, let's begin the incredible story of a young man who turned struggle into strength, Jamal Roberts. The early life of Jamal, humble beginnings and big dreams. Long before the bright lights, sold-out concerts, and international headlines, there was just a boy named Jamal Roberts who grew up in a small, worn-out apartment on the edge of a forgotten neighborhood. The kind of place where sirens were more common than laughter and dreams often got lost in the struggle of daily survival. Jamal's childhood wasn't painted with the colors of privilege. It was more like a grayscale film filled with late rent notices, school lunches paid in coins, and nights when the power got cut. But through it all, there was always one constant in his life: music. His mother, a single parent who worked double shifts as a cleaner, would hum old soul classics while folding laundry late at night, and Jamal, even as a toddler, would quietly echo her tunes. There was no piano at home, no vocal coach, no fancy gadgets, just an old secondhand radio that he practically worshipped. By the time he was 7, Jamal could memorize every note of a song after hearing it once. By 10, he was singing at local churches, talent shows, and community events. Everyone who heard him knew there was something different about this kid. Not just the voice, but the emotion, the conviction, the way his sound made people feel. But the streets around him didn't care much about dreams. They were full of distractions, danger, and the kind of pressure that could crush even the most passionate heart. Still, Jamal clung to his dream like it was oxygen. He didn't want to be just another story of wasted potential. He wanted more. He needed more. And somehow, against all odds, that little boy with big dreams kept moving forward. Teenage years, music as an escape and identity. As Jamal Roberts entered his teenage years, life didn't get easier. It got louder, harder, and more confusing. School was no longer just a place to learn. It became a battleground of identity. Jamal didn't quite fit into any of the usual boxes. He wasn't a jock, wasn't rich, wasn't part of the popular crowd. But he had one thing no one else had: a voice that could stop a hallway cold. At age 14, when most kids were figuring out how to survive adolescence, Jamal was already trying to survive in a world that often dismissed kids like him. He was bullied not just for being different, but for daring to dream. Teachers would overlook him. Classmates would mock his obsession with old school music. Yet Jamal had a kind of resilience that only grows in the cracks of hardship. He started writing lyrics in the back of his notebooks, skipping lunch to sneak into the music room, and watching YouTube videos to teach himself chords on the dusty school piano. Music wasn't just a hobby, it became his therapy, his outlet, his identity. At night, when the world felt too heavy, Jamal would put on his headphones and disappear into beats, lyrics, and harmonies that made him feel alive. He began uploading covers on social media, not to chase fame, but to share something real. Slowly, a small following started to notice him. Not for how he looked or what he wore, but for the raw emotion in his voice. It wasn't polished, but it was honest. And in a world full of filters and facades, honesty stood out. Jamal didn't realize it then, but his quiet rebellion, choosing music over fear, was already building the foundation of the artist he would one day become. Early struggles in chasing his dream. When Jamal Roberts made the decision to pursue music seriously, he stepped into a world filled with locked doors and silent rejections. His early attempts at getting noticed were met with deafening silence. He sent demos to local producers, emailed small labels, and even stood in line for hours at open mic events just to get 5 minutes on stage, only to be told, "We'll call you," more times than he could count. The reality hit hard. Talent wasn't always enough. In a world where connections often mattered more than creativity, Jamal was starting from scratch. He worked part-time jobs to save up for studio time, often sacrificing meals just to afford a few hours in a rented booth. There were nights he walked home with nothing but disappointment in his pocket and self-doubt ringing in his ears. But Jamal refused to quit. He recorded music in makeshift home studios, sometimes under blankets to muffle the noise, using secondhand mics and outdated software. His lyrics got sharper, his sound more defined. He faced harsh critiques online, comments about his appearance, his genre, his voice, but he used every insult as fuel. He studied the industry, took feedback seriously, and kept evolving. At times, even family members doubted his path, urging him to choose a more stable career. But for Jamal, music wasn't just a choice, it was survival. Every rejection became a redirection. Every failed audition a lesson. And every small win, a repost from a local artist, a shout-out from a YouTuber, became a sign he was on the right path. These were the years that built Jamal's grit. His journey wasn't lined with applause or praise. It was paved with resilience, a burning need to be heard, and an unshakable belief that his voice had a place in this world. The breakthrough moment. For Jamal Roberts, the moment everything changed didn't come with fireworks or fame. It started with a single upload. Late one night, after weeks of tweaking and re-recording, he posted a raw acoustic version of his original song Weightless on TikTok, expecting nothing more than a handful of views from friends. But by morning, the video had exploded. Thousands of likes, comments, and shares flooded in. People weren't just watching, they were listening, connecting, and crying. The authenticity in his voice, the emotion in every line, struck a universal chord. It wasn't a polished production, but it was real, and that was exactly what the internet craved. Within days, the video hit millions of views and industry eyes began to turn. Journalists started to ask, who is Jamal Roberts? Music blogs covered his story, influencers used his track in emotional edits, and fans began creating duets and covers of their own. What began as a simple post turned into a phenomenon. Then came the moment that would cement everything. A personal message from one of his biggest inspirations, an award-winning R&B artist, praising his talent and inviting him to collaborate. Jamal couldn't believe it. That DM, that opportunity, proved that the years of struggle were not in vain. From there, doors began to open that had once been firmly shut. Labels called. Podcasts requested interviews. Shows reached out. He was no longer just a voice in the crowd. He was becoming the name on everyone's lips. But Jamal remained grounded. Even at the height of this momentum, he reminded his growing audience that none of this happened overnight. This didn't start with a viral video, he said in a live stream. This started with nights I thought about quitting. That breakthrough moment was more than just a career milestone. It was proof that resilience, authenticity, and faith could rewrite your story in an instant. Rising recognition and first taste of fame. As the buzz around Jamal Roberts continued to swell, his world rapidly transformed from quiet introspection to flashing lights and roaring crowds. After his viral success, invitations started pouring in, from live podcast interviews and Instagram Live collabs to more serious industry attention from record labels and artist management agencies. At first, Jamal was overwhelmed. The boy who once played to an empty coffeehouse corner was now fielding calls from companies that had never returned his emails a year earlier. But instead of letting the attention go to his head, he approached every opportunity with humility and caution. He turned down several offers that didn't align with his values, choosing instead to sign a short-term independent distribution deal that gave him creative control. That decision paid off. His first professionally mixed single, All the Ways I Fall, debuted on major streaming platforms and immediately landed on curated playlists. The song wasn't just streamed, it was lived, shared, quoted. Fans tattooed lyrics on their arms, and teachers shared it in classrooms discussing emotional expression through art. For the first time in his life, Jamal felt truly seen. Recognition came from all corners. Music critics praised his raw lyricism and genre-bending style that fused R&B, acoustic soul, and indie pop elements. Established artists sent shout-outs, calling him the voice of this generation's heartbreak. One particularly memorable moment was when he was invited to perform on a nationally syndicated late-night show. Walking onto that stage under studio lights and broadcast to millions, Jamal carried not just his voice, but his story, his struggles, his mom's unwavering belief in him, his sleepless nights wondering if he was enough. That performance ended with a standing ovation, and it was then Jamal realized that fame wasn't about billboards or screaming fans. It was about connection, about someone, somewhere, feeling less alone because of a song he wrote in his bedroom. This was his first real taste of fame, and rather than indulging in it, he chose to use it as fuel to stay authentic, stay grounded, and keep creating for the people who needed it most. Facing the dark side of fame. Just when Jamal Roberts began embracing the exhilarating rush of recognition, he was forced to confront the unspoken toll that often shadows rapid success, fame's darker side. In the early months following his breakout performance on national television, Jamal's life became a whirlwind of events, interviews, studio sessions, and social media buzz. But behind the scenes, the pace was relentless, the expectations suffocating. The very platforms that once celebrated his vulnerability now dissected his every move. Critics, trolls, and strangers alike suddenly felt entitled to have an opinion on everything he did: his music, his style, his personal life. Rumors began swirling about his sexuality, his family, and supposed diva behavior during rehearsals. None of which were true, but the damage was immediate. For someone who had always worn his heart on his sleeve, the emotional backlash was devastating. Jamal started pulling back from social media, battling waves of anxiety and sleepless nights. In interviews, he'd put on a brave face, but friends closest to him noticed the toll. He stopped writing music for weeks, struggling with self-doubt and a fear that his next project wouldn't live up to the hype. It wasn't just online toxicity. Even in real life, boundaries blurred. Fans approached him during quiet dinners, photographers snapped photos without consent, and industry professionals pressured him to shift his sound to something more commercial. For a young artist who had risen through honesty, being asked to dilute his truth felt like betrayal. At his lowest point, Jamal nearly walked away from it all. But instead of quitting, he sought therapy and leaned on his support system, especially his mother and a few trusted friends who reminded him why he started. He also wrote a song during this period, "Cameras Lie," a haunting, soulful ballad about the illusion of celebrity. That track resonated deeply with fans who had no idea he was suffering. Ironically, his pain gave birth to one of his most impactful works. Jamal emerged from that dark phase not bitter, but wiser. He learned to set boundaries, speak out about mental health, and most importantly, protect the version of himself that fame could never buy or take away. That chapter in his life taught him that while the spotlight may shine brightly, it's the shadows behind it that test your spirit and shape who you really are. Jamal's biggest career milestone. In the ever-evolving landscape of music, where talent alone is rarely enough to sustain a long-lasting career, Jamal Roberts achieved a moment that not only cemented his name among rising stars but also marked a defining milestone that would forever change his trajectory: his performance at the Global Harmony Awards. Months after his breakthrough on national television, Jamal was invited to be one of the featured performers at the prestigious event, an annual showcase of world-class musical talent that reaches an audience of millions across the globe. It wasn't just a stage, it was a statement. What made this invitation even more groundbreaking was that Jamal, at only 21, was the youngest solo performer on the lineup, and the only artist without a major label backing him. The stakes were enormous. Leading up to the performance, Jamal spent sleepless nights refining every note, working with a live band for the first time, and even choreographing a minimalist but emotionally powerful stage presence. The song he chose, "Unspoken Grace," was a ballad he had written during his toughest emotional period, and it carried a message about silent resilience and healing, something deeply personal, yet universally understood. The moment he stepped on that massive stage, draped in simple attire and framed by cascading lights, there was a collective hush. For 4.5 minutes, Jamal didn't just sing, he delivered a sermon of hope. Every lyric struck like a heartbeat, and as the final note lingered in the air, the silence broke into a thunderous standing ovation. Social media erupted instantly, hashtags trended worldwide, and even established artists like Alicia Keys and John Legend praised the performance. But beyond the praise, what made this moment Jamal's biggest milestone wasn't just the fame, it was the validation. For the first time, he saw the impact of his vulnerability on a global scale. He later described the performance as the moment he realized his music could be more than personal, it could be medicinal. Labels began knocking, sponsors reached out, and global tour invitations started to pour in. Still, Jamal stayed grounded. Instead of chasing the highest bidder, he took his time to build a team that believed in his vision. That night at the Global Harmony Awards didn't just elevate his career, it redefined his purpose. It proved to Jamal and to the world that authenticity could not only survive in the music industry, it could thrive. Giving back, using his platform for good. While fame often changes people, for Jamal Roberts, it became a mirror that reflected the very values he held close long before the world knew his name. After his breakout success and his unforgettable performance at the Global Harmony Awards, Jamal didn't rush into luxurious purchases or wild headlines. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the communities that raised him, especially the overlooked neighborhoods where talent like his often goes unnoticed. In interviews, Jamal repeatedly mentioned how growing up in a low-income environment taught him not just resilience, but also a sense of responsibility to uplift others when given the chance. That's exactly what he did. Less than 6 months after his career exploded, Jamal launched the Rhythm Roots Initiative, a community-driven project aimed at providing free music education, instruments, and mentorship to underprivileged youth in inner-city schools. The program started small, with weekend workshops at a local rec center, but quickly grew as donations and volunteers poured in. What made the initiative different was Jamal's hands-on involvement. He didn't just lend his name, he showed up. From teaching songwriting classes to organizing showcase nights where kids could perform, Jamal poured his energy into helping others find their voice. His belief was simple: talent is universal, but opportunity isn't. The program also partnered with mental health professionals to incorporate music therapy sessions, recognizing that creativity often becomes a vital outlet for trauma. Through his initiative, dozens of young musicians have gone on to receive scholarships, produce their own music, and even open for Jamal at his smaller tour venues. Beyond education, Jamal has used his platform to speak out on issues like racial injustice, LGBTQ+ rights, and youth homelessness, causes close to his heart. Whether it's through benefit concerts, online fundraisers, or amplifying grassroots campaigns on his social media, Jamal uses every opportunity to redirect attention to the voices society tends to ignore. And perhaps most impactful of all is the quiet consistency with which he gives. No PR stunts, no need for recognition, just genuine acts of service. For Jamal, giving back isn't a side project, it's part of his identity. He often says that his success means nothing if it doesn't create space for someone else to rise too. His legacy, even in its early chapters, is already being written not just in songs, but in lives changed because he chose to use his voice for more than just music. Overcoming personal loss and hardship. Behind every powerful voice lies a deeper story, often shaped by pain, struggle, and personal loss, and Jamal Roberts is no exception. While many fans celebrate his meteoric rise to stardom, few realize the heavy emotional baggage he has carried through much of his life. Jamal has been candid in multiple interviews about the challenges he faced growing up, not just financially but emotionally as well. His mother, who worked double shifts as a nurse, was the backbone of his early life, while his father was largely absent, creating a vacuum of male mentorship that Jamal had to navigate alone. But the most heart-wrenching chapter came when Jamal lost his younger sister, Aaliyah, to a rare illness when she was just 10 years old. At the time, Jamal was only 16, already wrestling with identity, ambition, and the weight of unspoken grief. Aaliyah had been his biggest cheerleader, always encouraging him to sing and write songs, even when they had no electricity or when dinner meant splitting a single cup of noodles. Her death left a void in his soul, one that he admits nearly silenced his music forever. For almost a year, Jamal didn't touch his keyboard. But grief has a way of transforming into fire, and eventually he turned back to music, not for fame but for healing. The first song he wrote after her passing, titled "Still Here," became a quiet anthem for those coping with loss, and it marked the beginning of a deeply emotional chapter in his songwriting. Later, when Jamal experienced a very public breakup at the height of his early fame, he was thrust into another storm, not just of heartbreak but of scrutiny and invasive commentary. The relationship, which had been celebrated online, became tabloid fodder, and Jamal struggled with depression and anxiety, worsened by the pressure to maintain a perfect image. Instead of hiding, he spoke openly about his mental health, using interviews, social media, and even his lyrics to advocate for emotional transparency, especially among young Black men, a demographic often discouraged from expressing vulnerability. His honesty sparked conversations, inspired fans to seek help, and even led to partnerships with mental health organizations. Through all the personal loss and public hardship, Jamal's resilience became one of his most admired qualities. He emerged not only as an artist but as a symbol of endurance, showing millions that it's okay to fall apart as long as you're willing to rebuild. His pain didn't break him, it refined him. And in each chord he plays, in each lyric he pens, there is a trace of that journey, a reminder that true strength often comes from the most fragile places. Legacy and lessons for the next generation. As Jamal Roberts continues to rise, one question echoes louder among fans and critics alike. What will his lasting impact be, not just as a singer but as a human being? Legacy is often something artists think about late in their careers, but for Jamal, it's already become a core part of his mission. At only 24, he's already using his platform to uplift others and reshape what it means to be a modern musician. For Jamal, music has never just been about melodies or chart positions. It's about meaning. From his earliest performances in church halls to headlining sold-out venues, he's always viewed music as a form of storytelling, a way to preserve memory, inspire change, and pass on wisdom. And now, he's using that same power to mentor the next generation. In interviews, Jamal often talks about his desire to create bridges instead of walls, especially for young artists from underserved communities. He recently launched a grassroots initiative called Voices Forward, a mentorship and recording program that partners with local schools to give aspiring artists access to instruments, studio time, and mentorship, all funded from a portion of his own tour proceeds. He also regularly visits juvenile centers and youth shelters, performing acoustic sets and talking directly to teens about self-worth, creativity, and resilience. These aren't just photo ops or PR stunts. They're deeply personal missions rooted in his own experiences as a kid who once had talent but no tools. Jamal has also become a vocal advocate for diversity in the music industry, calling out the underrepresentation of Black creatives in production, management, and executive roles. At several award shows, he's used his stage time not for self-congratulation, but to push for equity and accountability. His speech at the National Music Leadership Summit, where he said, "We can't keep asking for a seat at the table, we have to start building new tables," was met with a standing ovation and sparked real discussions across industry boards. Yet, perhaps Jamal's most powerful legacy lies not in institutions or accolades, but in the hearts of his listeners. Thousands have written to him, shared their stories, and tattooed his lyrics on their skin. He's become a voice for the voiceless, a role model for kids who feel invisible, and a reminder that greatness doesn't come from perfection, but from passion and persistence. Whether it's a vulnerable lyric about grief, a motivational verse about triumph, or a quiet moment of mentorship offstage, Jamal Roberts is building something that lasts. Not just hits, but hope. Not just fame, but a future. And as he continues to evolve, grow, and give, one thing becomes clear. His music may fill arenas, but his legacy will echo in the lives he's touched far beyond the stage.